problems with canned smoke. Legionnaire's disease is not that common in the United States. It's a bacterial infection, so it tends to affect certain parts of the world and certain especially susceptible people, but it's not actually that common. C is about mold, and I have a gnarly story for you about mold. When I was in college, I had a really good friend who I think I told you had a mysterious infection on his hand that he got while doing research on fish in Costa Rica. Did I ever mention this to you? No. Thank you.
Who was that directed at? Even walked out backwards and maintain eye contact.
I'll have to assume that there might have been something else in the story, so I was going to move on. Okay. So I had this friend. Had a really interesting health problem with his hand. He got one of these medical resistant bacterial infections. He had a staph infection that didn't respond to treatment. So it started with like a little poke and started to eat at his hand, and then they had to like keep him in the hospital for a while. They wouldn't let him leave because he had this type of disease that's really hard to treat and he wanted to get everywhere. He got lucky and he disappeared from his hand. I thought I told you about him. So anyway, that's a separate story. Same guy, years later, goes to do research on water quality in Lake Tahoe. Lives in the town of Truckee. Raise your hand if you know where Truckee is. Okay. So you might know that Truckee often gets snow. And he lived in a really crusty old wooden house. You guys know what's required to grow mold? There's 3 ingredients. Water? No, they can grow in the cold. No? Carbon, a source of carbon. And dark. They need water, carbon, and dark. Homeboy lived in an old wooden house that had like a little tiny crack in the roof, so the snow that would accumulate on hot days would start to melt, would get through that teeny little crack, and basically the entire crawl space of the attic, where he never went in because it was a rental, the entire crawl space was like a thick mat of mold.
Oh, gosh.
The mold was eating all the dust and all the wood, carbon source, in the crawl space, which is dark, using all the water that came from the snow melt getting through a crack. Of course, because it was a crusty old house, the ventilation system was kind of spotty, so the mold started to grow in his vent. And he put all this together later. He and his girlfriend had their bed directly underneath the ceiling register for the vent. So the vent kept dumping all these mold spores on my butt. Funny thing about mold is some mold releases spores that are toxic. And apparently, this is a way to kill competing mold. So when the mold senses the presence of another, it becomes more toxic to kill that other mold. Unless, of course, a human is breathing it, and then some of those toxins can affect you. He got really gnarly inflammation and scarring of his lungs. So for about a year, he was living on a limited lung capacity. It gave him what's called chronic fatigue syndrome. which you may have heard about is like people who have no energy. So he had to quit his job and he couldn't pay his bills and he started going to doctors and he was really worried because he wasn't getting better. He'd wake up and feel like dead tired. He'd sleep 18 hours a day. He got super depressed. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, so he kept going to all these specialists. He put everything on his credit card. And then he realized he couldn't get another job and he started to his credit started to have problems. He couldn't pay his credit card because it wasn't working. He had no way to feed himself and his girlfriend, so all things started mooching off his parents. And they covered his bills for a while. And they kind of ran out of money. He was still scared. He couldn't figure out what was wrong. He still couldn't work. He disappeared. He went to go live in the desert because he heard that dry air was good for mold infections. Then that didn't work out, so he went to go live in Hawaii because he heard that Hawaii has really clean, humid air as another way to treat mold. And then he stopped returning calls, and he changed his address to get away from the credit agencies, but he didn't want his parents to know so that they wouldn't be lying for him, so he couldn't tell his parents where he went, and every time he died. Super gnarly. As a coincidence, don't worry, I just ran into him. He's okay. He's married now. In Ohio or something like that. But he never really recovered. He can't do exercise, he can't ride bikes or run, he can't go up a lot of stairs. His lungs are limited capacity for life. It's super, especially because this guy was a really vibrant, physically healthy, genius guy. He was one of my better friends in college. It's really cool dude. Super, super interesting, cool guy. This indoor air quality thing is super serious. You can get random gases that seep into your house from the soil. Some of them are naturally occurring. You can get pesticides that are either used on purpose or just leaking into your building by accident. Of course, you've probably heard about asbestos, right? Asbestos is a really serious indoor air pollutant. Especially if you live in buildings from a certain era, this high school. You guys come and go, but I've been in this asbestos-insulated and asbestos-floored space for 7 years and counting.
So you got about 2 more.
Yeah. There's a lot of insulation or glue that will leach formaldehyde, which is a VOC. And of course, you can get a lot of irritation from dust mites, pollen, and pet dander. And for some people, that can be a really severe problem. Yeah?
Aren't most asbestos not much water?
Not only that, but even if you live in a house with a ton of asbestos, it's not likely that you'll get it into your lungs unless you pulverize it or aerosolize it. But if you don't know and you're renovating your house as a junior, home improvement guy, you might release tremendous amounts of asbestos. Some of them are dangerous, not all of them. You're right. We'll have a good point. Not all types of asbestos are dangerous.
So what about electricity stuff that kids do when they throw their pencil?
First of all, it's not stupid. How dare you? And yeah, that's awesome. And second of all, I'm not sure that would liberate asbestos in particular. I think it would be a lot worse to peel up these floor tiles.
I noticed when now you say that there's several missing.
Yeah, so when the guy does that, he has to wear a dust mask. He has to leave the door open to let the glue dry. And there's another thing about the store where the tiles have to be labeled in a certain way so it doesn't get burned.
So what was originally the drawdish that?
It's a cheap material that's inherently insulating. It's hollow fibers, a lot like fiberglass, but hollow. Yeah, like a leaf. Okay. In number 36, I have a couple of interesting stories to tell you about how indoor circulation of air can contribute to air pollution. As an interesting little factoid, in the United States, the value of your home is inversely proportional to how much air circulation you get on average. So many homes that cost more have less air circulation. than many homes that are inexpensive. It's probably because people with really low-cost homes don't have air conditioning, so for half the year they leave the windows open to circulate the air. And it could be a size issue, it could be a convenience issue, it could be that if you have a 7,000 square foot home, you're only using a couple hundred, so most of it is not, need circulation most of the building.
Yeah.
But I have an interesting example of this problem. I know a person who has a really big house, and this person is really paranoid about outdoor air quality. She's really worried about smog and I don't know what she's worried about. She lives in a part of the world that doesn't have smog, so it's surprising. But because she's really afraid of outside air quality, she got a really fancy central temperature control air filter system. And it came with like a lifetime warranty for all services. But the company who installed it shut down. So they never told her that she's supposed to change the air filter. Fast forward about 10 years, I'm visiting the house, and she's like, I'm sorry, it's really hot in here because we had to turn off the air conditioning. The guy's coming by today to fix it. It stopped working. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not that hot. But what happened? She's like, I don't know. It just stopped working. I said, you want me to look at it? She's like, oh, don't worry about it. The guy's coming over later. When the guy shows up, I'm kind of a dork that way. I like to fix stuff. So I'm like, hey, bro, can I just look over your shoulder? Like, he's like, no problem. You can come over, hang out. So I watch, and the air filter was this big square box inside of a specially built closet in the downstairs room of this woman's house. And it has this drawer that you pull out that has this little tiny filter. Anybody seen those for like an air conditioning system? Yeah, like that big. The guy pulls out the drawer and it wouldn't come out. So he had to remove this other panel on the top of the box, and then when he pulled out the air filter, it had like a quilt of hair, dust, and I don't know what else. It felt kind of moist and spongy. It was like quilt batting. It was nar. And the guy goes, lady, we got it. He walked into the kitchen and he goes, did you know that you're supposed to change these every 6 months? And the date says 11 years ago. And she's like, no, look, my paper says lifetime service. I thought they were going to do that. And he's like, yeah, but you know that when you called them, their business was shut down, right? And she's like, yeah, that's why I called you. He's like, yeah. That's exactly what he called me. And so he's like, okay, $13 part, $40 service. See you in 6 months. And he left that thing, so I started to mess with it. Like my knife, and I started picking through that quilted stuff. And there was like a layer of like green-gray stuff. And for a while, this woman had golden retrievers. So as you dig through the layers of crap in the filter, the hair color changes. No kidding. For a while, she had a white dog that died early of some weird like infection. I don't know what happened in its nasal system. So there was like layers of golden retriever, then layers of like white husky, then no dog hairs, just human hairs.
It's like paleoclimatology.
Totally. I put like a funk core in her air filter. Apparently, the guy was saying that those indoor air filters are supposed to improve your indoor air quality, but of course, if you leave all the gunk on the filter, really bad, they accumulate all of your air pollutants and then keep forcing them through your ventwork to circulate it around the house. So he was saying this is like 11 years of accumulated air pollution just cycling through this woman's house. She probably has like a $40,000 ventilation system that's basically making her house poisonous. The funny thing about HVAC systems is if the humidity gets too high or the filters get plugged, you can just spread around infection, which is sort of an interesting story. Yeah.
So what is the deal with like the little air purifier thing? So, you know, little plug-in ones that are like 4 feet tall or something.
What is the deal with those?
Like, do you guys work? Do they clean your air? Or?
Well, I'm generally very